Saludos, it's your host, Gabe Morales. We've been covering Mexican Mafia members over the past 60 plus years, and we're returning with the S last names, as in Simon. I'll start off with Alfred A. Sandoval, aka Chato, who was a street gang member from Arizona, Maravilla. He had a D number, 61000. Chato came to prison on 5 homicide convictions. He was put on death row in 1985 under that D number. While he was housed at San Quentin's death row, he was said to be involved in the 187 of Jimmy character Palma, who was involved in those Madsen Road massacre cases that I talked about. Chato ended up appealing murder convictions on prosecution misconduct. He was moved to Pelican Bay in 1989. As many of you already know, gang members and even entire Mexican gangs in Southern California who do not kick back drug profits to the M.A. or do not take care of business are given a green light, and their names can be put in the hat to be assaulted on the streets, in jail, or in prison. Maravilla in East LA is a very large area and has always been very independent. After the Emma Edict was put out in the early 90s, Maravilla scoffed at paying any taxes to the Emma and even boasted that they were tax-free. By 1993, all Maravilla gangs were put on a green light list for this rebellion and not getting with the Emma program. There were many fights and murders that took place at the time out on the streets and in jail. As a result, the Maravillas had to be separated at the LA County Jail. It is believed that Chato finally had Maravilla removed from the green light hit list after he paid a fine for them, and evidently that is held steady. In recent years, Maravillas have again been able to coexist with Sureños in custody per LA County Sheriff's Operation Safe Jails program, as well as are able to walk GP yards with active Sureños in CDC. When he continued appealing his case, he was known as a shot caller at the LA County Jail in 2002. I understand that he was involved in taxing Blythe Street, who I talked about recently. Chato was one of the main MA reps to sign the End of Hostilities Agreement that was started by Aryan Brotherhood member Todd Ashker. Sandoval continues to be housed at Pelican Bay SHU today. There was Gilbert Manitas Sandoval. I think he may have been from Florencia, but possibly Norwalk. He had a B number, 40175, and was born in 1948. At one time, I understand he was celled up with Joe Morgan, so would have been well connected. He was with Shai and Cadena as a bodyguard when Shai was stabbed and thrown over the tier and killed. Manitas was also thrown over the tier and had extensive head injuries. I understand he was left a vegetable and later died. There was Javier Jr. Sandoval from the Ontario Black Angels. He had a K number of 88957, and I believe was born in 1971. I showed that he hit CDC in 1998 and was housed at Corcoran from 2016 through 2021, and is currently housed at SATF in Corcoran. There's Rafael Chispa Sandoval from El Hoyo Mara. He had an A number of 72960. Chispas joined the MA in the early 1960s and was in charge of community concern, as I mentioned several times before. He's another one with Robot Salas that definitely would have been in the top 5 if the Mexican Mafia had a rank system. And here he is seen with Robot Salas, as well as Jimmy Capola and Robot's girlfriend, Patty Dominguez, at Luminarius Restaurant in Monterey Park, where many Mexican Mafia members would hang out. He was celled with Joe Morgan at one time and was very close to Joe. My mentor, Robert Moco Morel, followed him very closely. And by that, I mean had surveillance on him and Joe Morgan, as well as other tapemeros. I actually met Chispas in his later years, and he was a very intelligent individual long after he had joined Victory Outreach. Here he is seen with the Carnales in the VO program. I, for one, do believe people can change, and if they find the Lord, that change often comes a lot sooner. There was Ruperto Chino Sandoval, who had a B number, 22166. He may have been related to Chispas. I'm not 100% sure, but if so, he was about 5.5 years younger. He was MA in the 1970s and was involved in an attack on NF associate Mike Nolan in December 1972, which in addition to the Aranda brothers hit, was just another incident that I believe caused the NF to kill MA icon Shai Cadena when he was at Palm Hall for peace talks with the NF. Understand that Chino was killed in August of 1978 by La M. There was Hernaro Toro Sandoval Serna. He was from Sinaloa, Mexico, and I understand had connections to El Chapo, Guzman Loera. Toro had a K number, 948, and I believe was born in 1976. I show that he was M.A. at Corcoran in 2016, but is currently not in custody. There was Ernesto Ernie Santana from Modesto. He had a B number of 48243 and was M.A. in the mid-1970s, but I am unsure of what happened to him. There was Richard Chuco Santiago from Hayward, which is in Northern California, in a gang called A Street. Chuco entered the Youth Authority in 1976 and paroled in 1977. He was popped for dope in 1981, whereby he got C number 32000. He paroled in 1983, but got a parole violation in 1984 and was housed at San Quentin in 1985. He paroled in 1986, but was convicted of a bank robbery in 1988, as well as a non-federal case robbery in 1988. And I understand was involved in a homicide of an inmate at the Fresno County Jail. In addition, he was convicted of committing a murder at Lompoc in January 1989. He then came back for some old cases and was housed at New Folsom in 1991 at A5 Violence Control Unit. I remember this very clearly because it was very rare to see MM members from Northern California, and I remember seeing him in his cell door window, and when I was feeding him, saying, "Hey, if you can't beat him, join him, eh?" And he just kind of smiled. Understand then he was released, but came back with an assault with deadly weapon charge in 1998, whereby he acquired K number 63885. He then went back to the feds and was housed at the ADX by at least 2003. And on April 21st of 2005, he was involved in the murder of a longtime Memero, Tati Torres, who I'll get into more detail under the T episodes. Tati was stomped to death by Chuco and assisted by Silvestre Rivera, who was sent to the BOP from Arizona, but was at the very least a California Mexican Mafia associate, or he would not have been involved in that murder plot. Understand that the death of Tati was sanctioned by none other than M.A. shot caller Champrenoso at the ADX. Chuco is currently housed at Allenwood Prison in the BOP. There was Armando Santiston from the Bay Area. He was involved in multiple bank robberies in the 1980s and housed in the BOP under number 76110-001. I showed that he was released in April 1988, I believe from the Phoenix facility of the BOP. He had a brother, Beto, a.k.a. Silver Tongue Santisteban, who was Rubbe Soto's godson. Beto had a B number of 41075 and was MA in the 1970s. I understand was involved in a hit on the NF in 1977 at the California Conservation Center, but somehow got away with that one and paroled in 1975. Understand then he went back home where he's involved in some hits with Alfie Sosa, whereby he came back with a new B number of 84382. He was housed at Folsom Prison in the mid-1980s, but then paroled. Understand that Beto is now deceased. There was Philip Ralph Blackie Segura from Clover. I showed that he was first arrested for theft of a motor vehicle in 1965, when he would have been about 16 years old, and was sent to the Youth Authority. He was arrested for rioting and assault in 1967, and his criminal career took off after that. Understand he was involved in a homicide in 1968, which would be just one of many he would be involved in over his career, and given 5 to life. He was given B number 14319 and was just an associate when he was at Soledad in 1970, but understand put in some work for the brothers and was made a carnal at San Quentin. He ended up paroling after 5 years, but caught a parole violation in 1973. He was arrested for dope in 1977 by San Francisco PD and also was charged with a bank robbery in September of that year by Bell Gardens PD. It appears that he somehow bailed out on those charges, but caught a parole violation and was sent to CIM. I don't know how he did it, but they were getting kind of weak back then, kind of like they are today. And I showed parole in January 1978. He then was popped on another bank robbery in June of 1978 by Montebello PD. And for this one, he didn't get off so easy. He was given 15 years in the feds. He was sent to Lompoc under BOP number 14801-116. And was said to have been involved in several homicides there in a murder plot with Champrenoso, his longtime fellow Emero in the federal system. including that on Thomas Hapo Trejo. He was moved to Marion in 1981, and it appears he was acquitted in the Lompoc murder case in November 1986. He remained at Marion for many years, and eventually was moved to the ADX, and sat on the MA Commission with Champ Reynoso and Willie Bobo Giovea. I show that Blackie was released in September 2020, and I understand is now retired with no repercussion by the brothers, since he put in so much work over the years. There is Philip Angel Seteno, who is at the very least an MA associate. I understand that he was involved in a 187 stomping of an individual named Bottoms. I believe this homicide took place in the Orange County Jail and was mostly pinned on Aryan Brotherhood member Art Rufo in 1981, and I am unsure of his current whereabouts. There were two brothers, Eddie and Fred Serenana, at Hawaiian Gardens. Eddie had a B number, 24083, and was born in 1939. His younger brother, Freddie, had B number, 33265. I showed they were both active in the MA in the 1970s, and I'm unsure of what happened to them after that. There was Angel, a.k.a. Little Chino Serrano, from San Diego National City. He had a C number, 44573, and was born in 1962. I show he was MA by the 1990s and was moved to Pelican Bay, where he was housed for many years. He then was housed at New Folsom State Prison in 2016, but I show is currently not in custody. There was Raymond Huero Shai Shyrock from Arta. He is a longtime Emero. He was convicted of assault with a deadly weapon in 1970 and given B number 28722, and quickly became involved in La M. He paroled in 1972 and was very active during the 1970s, as seen here. He was convicted of a robbery in Azusa in 1982, as well as a murder case, whereby he was given C number 57475. He was housed at Folsom in the 1980s, but had paroled by 1990. While he was out in the street, Widow Shai was very active, taxing and extorting gang members and enforcing the will of La M, something he took very seriously. In early 1995, he and his wife Bunny and their children moved to El Monte. He found out that a Mexican Mafia dropout named Anthony Dito Moreno was living almost next door to him. Moreno was on the green light hit list, and Güero Shai recruited Luis Pelon Maciel to carry out the hit. Pelon used street soldiers from the Sangra gang to hit the residents. The shooters were very anxious to impress the MA, but the shooters not only killed Dito Moreno and his associate, Tito Aguirre, who just so happened to be visiting at the home where he often did tattoo work, but they also killed Dito's sister and her 5-year-old daughter and 6-month-old son. This was bad press for La M. They were not supposed to kill children, and the MA took out their vengeance on the baby killers and killed Jimmy Character Palma on a death row exercise yard at San Quentin prison. I'm probably going to have to do a special episode on Güero Shai. There's just too much information for this video, and he currently resides at Victorville. I have a Natividad Snake Sierra. He may have been from P12 Street. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to have to check on that. He had an E number as an Edward, 76828, and was born in 1971. I showed that he was convicted of an attempted 187 in 1990, whereby he was given E number, 76828. I show he was made MA sometime in the 1990s and is currently housed at Salinas Valley State Prison. There was Gilbert Mongo Silva from Florencia. He was an MA member in the 1970s and was very close to several heavyweights, as seen here. Understand that he was out by 1976, but then murdered Evaristo Blanco January 31st of 1976. And I understand dropped out in the late 1990s and paroled in October of 2011. There's Richard Mosca Solis from Moya Soto. He had an A number, 90518, and was born in 1946. I show his name appeared on a MA roll call in 1967 at San Quentin and as tracked by Sergeant Bill Hankins. And I understand he was involved in the hit on Philip Rebel Neri in March of 1968, which was one of many events that led to the shoe war. I understand that he was held at CIM in 1971 and went out to court and was held at the San Bernardino County Jail with multiple MA in the early 1970s. He went back to SQ by 1973, but I understand was hit by Mo Farrell, either at SQ or at Folsom. I heard that he was later killed by the cops. There was John Loquito Solis from Parque. He had a C number, 62754. I recall this guy from Beef Facility, New Folsom in 1991, and he was housed at Tehachapi in 2012 and currently resides at Folsom State Prison. There was Michael Jasper, a.k.a. Dozer Solis from La Puente. He had a P number, it's in Paul, 23301. I showed that he was only an associate in 1998, but then committed a homicide and was housed at San Quentin's death row. Now, before some of you guys say this guy's not a carnal, I've talked to some people who said he's a maid and some saying that he's actually just a J-cat. He is currently housed at Sentinella, so hopefully CDC knows what they're doing. We have the notorious Alfred Richard, a.k.a. Alfie Sosa, who also operated under the fake name of Frank R. Martinez. Like Champ, he was born in Colorado, but moved to L.A., and claimed a barrio named Happy Valley. He had a B number, 4831, and was active in the MA in the 1970s, got released, and then came back with a new B number of 24633. He was housed in Washington State and McNeil Island in the 1970s and paroled by 1975. When he hit the streets, he became a killing machine. Like I said, was involved in multiple homicides. Much of his escapades are covered in the traffic stop by my mentor, Robert Mocha Morrill. He is believed to have been involved in about a dozen murders, and I believe was convicted of at least 6. Alfie ended up being given a C number, 44192, which he kept until his death. He was housed at Old Folsom in 1984, Building 4A, which was the security housing unit at that time, and he remained at Folsom until 1986. He ended up being shipped out to another prison, I can't remember, but one of the shoes, and then came back to New Folsom in 1992, at which time I had him in one of the units I worked. He then was moved up to Pelican Bay and was a main instigator in the major riot they had up there. I'll have to do a special episode on Alfie. There's just way too much to cover here. He returned to New Folsom in later years and died in December of 2021 of kidney failure, probably due to drug abuse. There was a Raymond Soto, a.k.a. Ray Ray from La Puente. Understand that he was very close to Ray Sanchez that I mentioned in the previous episode. Understand that he was in the Boxer Enriquez car in the 1980s, but I'm unsure what happened to him. There's a James Rubin, a.k.a. Rube Soto, a.k.a. Jimmy Standard. He also went by Aztec code name Cholo. Again, please excuse my poor Nahua. He has that Aztec god on his back, which was the god of fire and lightning. He was the twin brother of Quetzalcoatl. To me, it's kind of like the story of Cain and Abel. Quetzalcoatl was supposed to be the good brother, and Cholot was supposed to be the evil brother, associated with death, storms, and lightning. And indeed, Rube was a one-man hurricane. On his back, Rube wore the tattoo of La M Primero, translated as the M comes first. And as I have stated several times, and is covered under the M Reglas special episode, La M Primero also means even before your family. He is considered to be one of the original Mexican Mafia members in the late 1950s and is the oldest surviving Mexican Mafia member that I know of. He had a number, 37735, and was a major fixture in CDC and out in the streets for many years. He ended up being housed at Tehachapi Shoe in 1987, and I understand went to the feds due to a bank robbery and given BOP number 02161-097. He was housed at Lompoc in 2005 and I believe Victorville in 2006 and released in 2007. He was housed at Pelican Bay in 2012, but released in April of that year. He then was indicted on a RICO case in August 2013, whereby he returned to the federal BOP system and was released in May of 2018, but I believe was arrested again and given V number 48518. He then was released, but returned back to custody around 2020 and given BR number, as in bank robbery, 0329, and is currently housed at Richard J. Donovan. There is Abraham Shark Suarez from San Diego National City. He had a B number of 47448 and was born in 1953. I show that he committed a murder in 1972 and then was processed at CIM in 1973 under B number 47448. I show that he paroled in 1977 and I'm unsure what happened to him after that. And lastly, we have Alfredo Jose Rascal Suarez, from the Imperial Valley, Calexico. Understand that he committed some murders in Mexicali for the Ariano Felix organization and was housed at the San Diego County Jail in 1985. Once he was convicted, he was given H number 52800. He was housed at Corcoran for many years, and I understand was Artie Guzman's secretary. He then was moved to Pelican Bay Shoe and spent many years there. And before we end, I hope you have a great day and consider that success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. That's not my quote. That's by Albert Schweitzer, who is a musician, a writer, philosopher, and physician. And with that, this is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians.
When your eyes